Right, welcome back to Pine Tree State Restorations and the Pioneer SX-1080. Now we're going to continue with it's going to be like 3 or 4 parts on this, but I want to explain what's going on here. So the first thing I did was you got to take that front panel off. You want to save all the screws and everything. Behind that panel, there's a bunch of little Phillips screws that hold these control panels in. One here and one down here. And we're going to be cleaning these potentiometers and all these pots because they're dirty and they're not going to work. So if you look at this, if you look down in here, you can see on these rockers, on these flip switches right here, you could give it a shot of deoxit, right, in that hole, and then work those switches. Okay, I also take a Q-tip and some WD and I wipe off these arms to get dusty and crusty, get those cleaned up. On the potentiometers, you got to come around the back and you'll notice, if you can see, there's a little hole on top. You're going to want to take that and you're going to want to go in that hole and then work these potentiometers. They're really sticky and dry too. You might want to take a little deoxit too and give it it's a little tiny shot right there. Loosen that dried up grease up there a little bit. You see the hole on that one is right there. You want to give it a shot right in that hole. Just give it a little. That's all you need. Done. Work it. You're good. You're going to do that on all these. You'll take this bottom one out. There's several little screws. 2 more left in there. This will come out. I'm going to do this one first. Put it back in. Then this one. Put it back in. And then I'm going to clean this all up. Okay. And the faceplate and everything before I put it back on. Now, I got a brand new power cord. Okay. The original Pioneer power cord because this one's bad. And I got the new capacitors. And sometimes what you run into trouble with these capacitors is you'll notice there's a little, like, bridge on these capacitors that raise it up. And on these, there's no bridge, but the posts are a little longer. Sometimes those posts ain't long enough to reach these because there's a space right here. Okay, there's a little gap there. And sometimes that gap needs to be higher. Otherwise, this bracket right here or these screws won't line up depth-wise. So what you got to do, you might have to put a washer or 2 under those to get that right. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I've only ran into that one time, but I think these will be all right. These will be fine, and then you can get them on there. You can go in a little bit more than what they are, but you can't go too close because you're going to actually, if you got too close, you'd probably hit something. So got to keep that in mind. There's 4 screws that hold these capacitors on the other side. Let me spin this around real quick. You'll notice they're pretty buried in there. There's a clamp down inside there that holds those on to a bracket. And sometimes you have to take the bracket off, pull this out, put the new one back in, line it up, and then put it back in and put the screws in. Sometimes it can be a bear to get out of there. Okay? And then you're going to want to clean all this dust off here gently with a really soft acid brush, really small one, and a little low pressure, clean, dry air. Just clean this chassis off. Okay? And there's a variable capacitor. You're going to want to check that and make sure those bearings are lubricated on that. Make sure this bearing is lubricated on this. You want to go through and check all the mechanical stuff. Make sure that you don't have any bearing problems. Okay? Make sure nothing's dry because it'll wear it out. Like this is probably pretty dry right here. So we're going to get some grease, re-grease that, and we're going to check all the little wheels. And probably there's a bearing on there and a bearing back here. We'll probably put a drop of grease in there and get that lubed up. Like go with the super lube, not regular car grease, but the super lube like this right here. Okay, this is good stuff. So there's where we're at right now. You can see the front of the face. Got that off. And we're going to be cleaning these switches first, putting them back in. And on the next video, we're going to go through changing the capacitors and putting the power cord on. They're kind of both in the same place. So we're going to do that all at once. We're going to do those and do this. Now be very careful that you don't hook these up backwards, because you'll blow everything to smithereens if you got the polarity wrong. They have a negative and a positive. See the positive symbol? You cannot mix them up. Okay? If you do, boom. All right? Also, make sure the radio is unplugged for a very long time. So those capacitors, I'm sure there's bleeder capacitors in the circuit somewhere. If not, you can, double check it. But here's the thing. You want to make sure those are completely discharged and you don't touch those two connections here at the same time, because it could kill you. Keep that in mind. Also, the one hand behind the pocket rule. If you're working on this radio, you put your one hand in your pocket and you use your right hand if you're going to unscrew something, or you got worries about high voltage or whatever. Because if you got two hands on the radio and you get shocked, the current's going to go completely through you and across your chest and could kill you. If you got one hand in your back pocket and that happens, you're going to get shocked on the right arm. It's going to be pretty painful, but you got a lot better chance of not dying. So keep that rule in mind, especially when you're working on high voltage amplifiers or something like a RF amp or a linear amp or something like that, to not get both hands in there at the same time. That's a very important rule. Save your life. So there we are on the SX-1080, and we're going to clean these switches. The next video, I'll have those back in, all cleaned up, and we'll go through the capacitors and the power cord. And then the next video after that, we'll probably do the chassis cleaning, and then we'll have it fired up and see how she sounds. So thanks again for watching Pine Tree State Restorations, and we will see you soon. Have a good one.